And then there's that beauty of reframing our language, demanding. Nobody wants to be demanding, but you are a leader. Like, why are you so articulate at voicing your needs? Like, we can come around somebody and phrase something so differently. And I just think of all the people listening who have ADHD and how it would have been amazing to have been spoken of differently. Like, wow.
Are you overwhelmed by motherhood and barely keeping your head above water? Are you confused and frustrated by how all the other moms make it look so easy? You can't figure out how to manage the chaos in your mind, your home, or your family. I get you, mama. Parenting with ADHD is hard. Here is your permission slip to let go of the Pinterest-worthy visions of organization and structure fit for everyone else. Let's do life like our brains do life. Creatively, lovingly, and with all our might. When we embrace who we are and how our brains work, we can figure out how to live our lives successfully and, in turn, lead our families well. At the end of the day, we just want to be good moms. But, spoiler alert, you are already a great mom. ADHD does not mean you're doomed to be a hot mess, mama. You can rewrite your story from shame spiral to success story. And I'll be right here beside you to cheer you on. Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD.
What is wrong with my child? If you have ever asked yourself that question, I want you to meet Mary Van Geffen. Mary is a parenting coach for moms with spicy children. She works with thousands of parents, helping us practice the spiritual discipline of staying calm, kind, and firm with your spirited powerhouse of a child, even when they don't deserve it. Mary is an ADHD mama just like us. Today, we're going to talk about her ADHD journey and how she started the Spicy Children movement. We talk about self-regulation and how we can calm ourselves when things are spiraling out of control. We also cover how can we link up our parenting style with our cycle so that we're matching our energy and our emotions to fit what makes sense for that time of the month so that we're giving our family the best version of ourselves. There is so much goodness in this episode, so let's get started. It's time to meet Mary Van Geffen. Let's welcome Mary to the show. How are you doing this morning?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to be with a fellow ADHD superhero.
Why, thank you. Do I feel like a superhero today? Yeah, I do. Some days I don't. I have to. Are you always this positive?
No, you just caught me in the right part of my cycle.
Perfect. Well, we're lined up then. We're going to dive into that in a second. First, I just want to ask you a little bit about your ADHD journey. Like, how did you find out you had ADHD?
I found out when I went to get my master's in marketing, and it was Kellogg Business School, and they're really into being groups. And we would get into groups, and anything that was financial or mathematical, I felt so lost in, and would try to sort of use my feminine wiles to get other people to hold to, I'll write it up. I'll do the write up. You do the math part, and just really realize like I'm smart, but I'm not getting this as quickly as everybody else is. And it's not like I can go sit in the school library and buckle down. Like there's something missing here. I just realized how much I relied on a lot of wooing to try to get to pass this master's. I'm happy to say I was able to do it. But then finding like, wow, then I got a job in marketing at Neutrogena. And I was so good at the ideating part. Like when they'd be like, come up with some new product ideas. I'm like, oh, I'll pull them out of my butt. You know, that's so easy for me to say, like, how about a cream that does this or a sunscreen that was so easy. But then when I would launch a product and they'd be like, so what happens if you sell 10% more? I'd be like, whoa, hold on a second. Let me go back to the drawing board and figure, like, it was such an aversion to being able to shift and give them the information that you need if you're going to be a well-rounded marketing manager. So I never made it to marketing manager. I should have just been an ideator type of person. Oh, so anyway, I figured it out. I was 29 in business school, realized there was this deficit, moved to New York to start a job at Clairol, and went to see a psychiatrist and kind of figured out let me try medication, because I just wasn't able to stay with and keep up with what was needed in sort of that corporate environment where you also are masking a lot and trying to act like an android along with everybody else. So that takes a lot of your energy. And then I moved to California because I met my husband, and there I was seeing a psychiatrist. And I remember him saying, this is only like 10 years ago, him saying, don't tell anyone that you're taking medication. This can be grounds for might not get a job you want, like you have a mental health condition. And because I was talking about, I was sharing with somebody, and it was such a like, keep it closeted. You don't know what people will do, what they find out. And I love that now here you and I are creating just little empires of goodness, being fully transparent about our mental makeup. And I don't like to think of it as a mental health deficit. It's more like I said in the beginning, I feel like I'm a superhero. I'm amazing at certain things. I can stay so present when I am coaching somebody one-on-one, like I'm almost in their body, but I can't tolerate a boring conversation at dinner. Like it's such a dichotomy. And so being 51 now, I'm just leaning into the stuff I'm amazing at, reveling in that, marinating it, and I'm hiring people and being vulnerable about the parts I'm not good at and taking a hall pass on those things.
So as you were like finding all this out, how did it make you feel when you're like looking back at grad school and all the what ifs? Did you ever head down that path?
I didn't have a lot of self-empathy at the time, but I remember a life-changing conversation with my cousin. And my cousin is a dermatologist, so assume that he has had a lot of, medical education. And I said, oh my gosh, I was so promiscuous. And I'm kind of embarrassed now. Like I sort of gave it away a lot. Let's just say that. And he said, but honey, you had ADHD and you were really struggling with impulse control. And that's a huge part of that. And high risk behavior and trying to get stimulation, mental stimulation and I guess physical. And he was saying this, and he had so much empathy that it kind of helped me access mine in the moment. Like, yeah, I wasn't making, and I'm also coming from an evangelical background with purity. So there's that I'm working through. And right. So that was one of the touchstones of having more empathy for myself. And I've had some interesting conversations with my mother, who's like, yeah, they would call me in because you were getting on top of the desks and dancing in second grade. And I was voted class clown, of high school senior year. And so I look back at that person who had like no guidance, and I feel so much empathy and love for her now. Going through it, I was just like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so overstimulated? Why is parenting so much harder for me? Why does my environment look so disgusting as I'm dealing with this? And why am I so affected by the noise and the touching of parenting?
Did you find anything that helped with that like overload of the touching and the noise? Was there anything that made that better?
Nature. Like I had at least 2 or 3 weekly standing park dates where we would take a blanket, throw it out on the grass. I'd bring a book and some snacks, and it was like, we're here for 2 hours, figure it out. And one of those places didn't even have like swings. It was just more like make something out of sticks. And, I would bring my full presents to them. So my kids loved it. And there'd always be another friend there on a blanket as well. But that decompression and that healing from being underneath the trees and not in your home with the sound. So that was super helpful. And I think now as a parenting coach, I advise people like, it's like a cup that's getting filled, and we don't wait till the end of the day to empty it. You empty it many times throughout the day so it doesn't overflow. So that means like sensory deprivation for 10 minutes. It's like, kiddos, I'm going to go in my room and I'm turning all the lights off. It's going to be dark in there. You may not come in, or if you got a spicy one, if you come in, you can lay next to me, but I won't be talking. And just having these moments of shutting it all down, adding a form of meditation, which I can take you through. I've got a 1-minute meditation that's so helpful for ADHD, but little things throughout the day versus, I'll have my time tonight, which just means I'll sabotage myself and stay up till 12 midnight, on some rabbit hole on Instagram. So making sure little moments throughout the day, really checking in with my body, like, oh, wow, I have to pee. Why don't I actually give myself the gift of going to pee versus holding it together and moving to the next thing? And then there's the whole fiefdom of self-talk and how tender you can be to yourself. And that changes everything versus, come on, what's wrong with you? Get this done. Like, I am so not a drill sergeant to myself. I am like the tenderest mother to myself now.
I think we don't think about all those little things as adding to the cup all day long. They're like, okay, let me just get the kids settled here before I go pee. Like that little thing that we ignore in our body, it's like they all start, things just like layer upon layer. And all of a sudden you've inched up the ladder and we get angry at ourselves because we say like, oh, well, I just went from like 0 to 100 for no reason. It was like, well, you didn't start at 0.
Really, you went from 99 to 100. You just didn't realize it.
Right. You didn't notice the 1 through 99.
Yes.
And then that one thing that sets you off, you're like, oh, how could I let that, that one thing make me lose my peace?
Yes. So asking yourself throughout the day, how you doing? Just like you would a friend who's got a lot on their plate. How's it going? And doing a body scan, like, oh, wow, your stomach is completely clenched, like you're going into battle. May I invite you to relax it? And check in with your jaw, just kind of little moments. That's to me is self-care, is like I cared for myself throughout the whole day that I also was caring for these people.
Yeah, I just recently started doing the jaw check. Elizabeth Brink had said something about that. And I was like, I never noticed how much I clenched my jaw. I had no idea. Now that I'm aware of it, I'm like, oh, this is a thing. Like, so it's been probably like a month now. I've been like, nope. Like let your face go. And then releasing that one little spot of tension then kind of like filters through. It doesn't at first, but like over time, it's like, then you're like, you let a little more go and you let a little more go until your whole body in like that little reminder of like, oh, let your jaw go. Your whole body will be like,
beautiful.
But we didn't even notice that we had gotten to the point of that, like clenching all over in the first place. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I like to tell people even little body cues that help you get calm when you're parenting, like taking the shoulders back and engaging your angel wings. Like imagine that, or put your crown on, which means you'd have to stack your vertebrae one on top of the other and like pull your head almost like there's a string in the middle, and like take a moment and embody the kind of presence you want to be to your kids, because our body is this amazing instrument and there is as much packets of information going up the vagus nerve to the brain from the body as the other way. So our body can communicate, this is what's happening, brain. And it's very helpful for me to choose a posture of parenting that I want rather than letting all the elements choose it for me.
Can you share what is the vagus nerve so that those of us who are not familiar?
It's a collection actually of nerves that goes up from our sort of our pelvis all the way up into the brain. And it's a big component of helping us to get calm or to be riled up into fight or flight. And so there's a lot of things that help it relax. For instance, sometimes we say, oh, breathe deeply. Well, actually a deep in-breath stimulates it in a way that puts us into fight or flight. Because if I go, that is an impulse of being a prey, right? Like about to be attacked. So deep breaths out, relax that nerve that goes right up to our brain and sends so many packets of information to say whether or not we're in threat or if we are safe. And when we're in safe, we do our best parenting.
I love that connection. So I'll say, I won't open this rabbit hole, but I have mold toxicity and I've been doing a lot of work with the vagus nerve, and I had no idea, like this nerve goes from your brain. It's like the biggest one. It runs down your neck through like multiple organs down like into your core. Like it is a huge piece of your body, and it's very long and very interconnected, and learning about how it affects, like you said, like the fight or flight and all that. I was like, there is so much about my body I do not understand. And yet I'm in it every day. It's amazing, like this piece of equipment that we have been given and yet do not understand it all.
And the capacity we have, and we're still learning new things. Like it's like watching Cirque du Soleil and going, I could probably do that if I knew how to dedicate my life to strengthening my body.
So now that you know you have ADHD, how do you live differently? How do you parent differently with that information?
Well, there's sort of like the privileged answer when you have the resources to spend on help. And then there's sort of like the internal, anybody can do it answer. First off, I'm very honest with my kids and with my friends that I've got some limitations here. I really try to focus on what's fun because I know if I go towards fun, I have a self-sustaining engine within me and I could keep at it. So if something's not fun, I have to work at how do I make it fun? Like obviously folding laundry, it's not fun. I can make doing laundry kind of fun because it's like, how quickly can I shove this in? Oh, there's the dog. Get away from me. I'm trying to push this. Like there's something I can gamify there.
Yeah.
But making something fun is really important for me. And so I kind of work at that both professionally and with my kids. Like I just saw recently a great idea, which is if you are having a hard time, like following through on things you put on your calendar, because that was my biggest problem is I would set a list of things I needed to do. And then I would disrespect myself by never looking at my calendar to see what those things were. So I had to train myself once a day, you look and see what's on the calendar because you need to respect past Mary. And she wrote some things down there for you to do, right? But I saw this person the other day who on their Google calendar, once they do something that they put on the calendar, they turn it to gray. And it's like 2 clicks. You click on the thing, turn it to gray, and it gamifies for you like, ooh, it looks so good to turn everything that was a color gray. Look at me, how great I am. Like I need those kind of things, even in parenting. So whether that's like I batch cooked oatmeal, look at me now, I just pull it out, I have a system. Or if it means, I don't know, like, again, I come back to the self-talk because now I have teenagers, right? And teenagers are brutal when they know your inner fears. And so my daughter likes to say, why don't you just get medicated? When she is asking me something in a harsh way, which that's just the teen, it's a phase. That's the product of them having a brain that's being reconstructed, right? So sometimes she kind of comes for me. And my thing is to pause. The more I can lengthen the time between the stimulus and my response and just create more space in that moment, whether it's 3 seconds or 10 seconds, the more I like how I respond. Now she sees that as me being spacey ADHD and says, answer me, why don't you just get medicated? And so now, guess what? I got to pause a little bit longer because that, ouch, I got to take a moment to notice how that felt. Ooh, I'm not going to respond. This is a person under stress who hasn't been on the planet long enough to, know what they're saying. So for me, really allowing myself to pause, going towards the fun. And then the last thing would be participating in the loving, because there was a time where I would be like, okay, I'm going to make these beautiful PB&Js for my kids and I'll put some fruit in there and some vegetables. And then I'd get to the park and there'd be nothing for Mary. I hadn't even considered that I too would like a beautiful little sandwich made for me. And I was just eating the crusts. And so really thinking clearly, what do I want? What do I need? Because there's no knight on a white horse coming to save us. We have to be the ones that show up for ourselves.
You touched on this a little bit about how is motherhood difficult when you have ADHD? Like you're talking about they haven't been on the planet long enough to know what they're saying, and we need that extra response time. Where else do you see that difficulty amplified because of your ADHD?
Well, I think of it mostly in the years of 2 to 10, ages 2 to 10, when children thrive on structure and rhythm and predictability. And here I am, this being that wants things to be novel and needs newness to stay kind of engaged. And so there's many a time where I lament that I couldn't be more of a structure. For some reason, one of the structures I could really hold to was nap time, but that's mostly self-serving because I wanted to shut the house down. So my kids got their nap. We left things that was sacred. And that's a nice touchstone in the middle of the day. But I would say structure and follow through. I recently took care of my 7-year-old niece for a week, and she would say things like, Aunt Mary, this time when you come pick me up, will you remember your mask, please? Or will you come on time this time so I'm not waiting by the tree so long? And it was like, oh, I'm having shockbacks to like how you sort of, you're going to have to call up the part in your child that creates structure in some ways. And that's okay. My niece and I were partnering to be a full person because I struggle with structure and being there on time and doing the same thing every day and saying, oh yeah, we'll do that. And then her saying, you said we're going to do that. And it's like, oh yes, then we're going to do it. So the follow through, I set a lot of alarms, like alarms to talk about things, alarms to say, hey, it's time for bedtime. The iPhone and its alarm system are critical to me in following through.
Switching gears a little, how did the Spicy Children movement begin?
Ooh, I love it. It's a movement. Well, for me, I gave birth to a spicy child who was larger than life. Other people would say, have a seat, we're going to sit down. And their kid would sit down and I would say, I don't want to. So this child had this huge sense of justice and could go toe to toe with adults and was just a big personality. And so was I. And there was a clash happening. And I kind of had a decision tree moment. I could either go the way my mom did, which is she loves to say things like it was my job to knock you down a peg or two. And that didn't feel good growing up. I don't want the person I rely on the most to be fixated on knocking me down a peg or two. Or I could do the work to figure out how to coexist and still shepherd this child, but maybe not have the expectations that other people have of their beautiful wallflower lemming children, which I didn't have. My second born is more that way. He'll do what I want for now, but he's 15. It's the bloom is falling off the rose. But those were the decisions I had to make. And at first it was like, no, I'm going to double down on making something wrong about her. So I ended up trying to find a therapist for her and kind of realized, wow, there's nobody for a normal cost will come and observe your child and tell you what's going on. So I ended up taking her to a play therapist and she went once, she went a second time. And the lady came out and said, why don't you come back on your own next time? And I thought, yes, we'll finally have a lesson plan for this psychopath and together we'll figure it out. And I ended up going myself for 2 years straight and my daughter never went back. And so it was realizing that, yes, she's strong-willed and a big assignment. I have a tougher assignment perhaps than some other people, but I was contributing so much to that with my mother wound, my need to control, my fear of what others would think. And so I worked on that for a solid 2 years. And now I get to help other people. My driving force is I don't want any mom that I touch to tell the story that their kid was the problem, because I don't think your kid's the problem. And I don't think you're the problem, but I think there's a lack of accessing your intuition and your heart that make it seem like you guys are in conflict or in battle. And really, you're just two people sharing the same tub of oxygen at the bottom of a pool, like scuba divers. And you need to get yourself self-regulated and calm and grounded, and miracles will happen for that child.
Do you think the key was not worrying about what other people think?
I don't think it's the key. I think it's one of like 8 principles. And this is a good layup. I teach the Moms of Spicy Ones course, and I've never taught it before, but I'm taking all these ideas and I'm basically coming up with like 8 postures that you need to practice that help you get more cooperation and connection with this intense child you've been given.
When you look at all the parents that you've helped and all their kids, would you say that most of those spicy kids have ADHD, or is it like more of a mix?
I think they might have attention issues. If you think attention issues are they're not paying attention to their mom, but I don't think necessarily. I think that people with spicy children sometimes start their journey wanting a diagnosis. Tell me what's wrong with this kid, and then I'll feel better. It won't feel like it's me. So there's a more propensity that they've gone down that route to, like I'll truth bomb. I don't believe in ODD. Oppositional defiant disorder is really just a collection of symptoms of a broken relationship and a very spicy, strong-willed child. And usually there's some family dynamics that have led to that. And so this whole posture of, oh my gosh, I'm at arm's length resisting this kid. What is wrong with them? That's got to shift, because that's not what's going to help. So I don't know the answer to that. I think it's at least 30% of them say their child has ADHD. And then a lot of times we figure out that they actually have it. And of course it's hereditary. So that makes sense. Yeah.
I think a lot of moms, especially if you have ADHD, you're always worried about what your kid has or will have because of all the parts that come into play. And you worry, like, did I give my kid this? And do they have these problems? And we're always so worried about what's going to happen with them. And I think we do have the propensity to look for that diagnosis because we are humans. We want more answers. We want the information. And it does make us feel better when we can put the name on it and be like, hey, it's not that there's something broken. It's that here's what they've got. It does feel better. I don't know if that's really the word I'm looking for. When you have a diagnosis.
What I find a diagnosis does is it just raises our empathy. Like, oh, okay, you have a thing. Now I don't have to make you so wrong when you won't do what I say when I haven't connected first with you and brought physical proximity to that. Now I can relax my judgment of you. And so sometimes we can do that without the diagnosis. And I'm not like anti-diagnosis, but when you go down that road and you trying to get a 6-year-old to figure out what's wrong with the 6-year-old, they pick up on that. And so if we could instead just have empathy for this kid, like they have an allergy to being controlled and we want to control them and we're going to have to figure this out.
I love what you said. They just haven't been on this earth long enough to know they shouldn't say that. If we don't have a diagnosis, that's a neutral thought, whether or not you're going to, that if we just look at them as you are a human that hasn't been on this earth long enough to have this skill set, that also can allow us to have more empathy. Because I'm one of the biggest offenders here of expecting my kids to be able to regulate themselves when I am not even regulating myself as the grown up in the situation, and expecting like when they're upset for them to like always ask kindly and with manners about like, give me some water. And be like, please, can I have some water? You know, and you're like mad at them that they're not asking in this kind voice with their good manners. It's like,
and then 5 minutes later, you're like, put your shoes on.
They're like, why are you so demanding? I'm like, oh, there are those mirrors again.
Yeah. And then there's that beauty of reframing our language, you know, like demanding. Nobody wants to be demanding, but you are a leader. Like, why are you so articulate at voicing your needs? Like we can come around somebody and phrase something so differently. And I just think of all the people listening who have ADHD and how it would have been amazing to have been spoken of differently. Like, wow, you're so creative. You have so many ideas and so much energy and you're so enthusiastic and you're so passionate. Like if we can just like marinate our children in positive life-building words, like it'll be a different planet.
So much so.
P.S. You're a really good interviewer. You know why? It's my personal opinion, is that you don't say at the end, I love that. I just love that. Most interviewers do that and it breaks the flow. You're using a lot of good self-management skills to take it in, absorb it, and go to the next thing rather than evaluate it. And that's important in parenting too. We don't have to say, I love your artwork. We can just say, see the blues and the reds.
Thank you. That's actually something I have been working really hard on in my interview skills, because it's like you want to like give them all this fun of like, yay, good answer, good job. Like just so that our kids like, yay, good picture, yay. Like we give them so much validation, and not to say that they don't need that, but sometimes we'll match with it. And it is really hard, especially with ADHD. I'm like, okay, working on like not saying and all that stuff. It's like, ooh, my brain has to like really. Mm-hmm. It works on overtime on interviews. I'll say that. I didn't realize how much energy it took me to interview someone, because I thought like I just ask a question and then I listen and they do all the work. And then I found that after I've been doing interviews for like about a year now, the days that I do interviews, I'm tanked. Like that is a huge energy output.
Well, because you're not just doing deep listening, you're doing deep listening and evaluating for education/entertainment. So it's like 2 levels of listening. That's intense.
And the self-management of trying to be better about the way I'm speaking. It's like, ooh, that's a lot. And I have learned to put them in my cycle in certain times.
Do you wish there was a way to feel confident about your day? To know exactly where you need to be, when you need to be there, and what you need to do today? I know what it's like to buy 15 different planners and not use any of them for more than a week or 2. When you're tired of disappointing your family, your boss, and yourself. Imagine with me that tonight, when you look back at your day, you know that you did the things on your to-do list. You showed up well. you feel productive and accomplished. That's why I created Daily Planning for ADHD Moms, where I teach you how to keep a calendar and organize your to-do list. When you learn these skills from another ADHD brain in super short videos, they finally make sense. So now you'll be able to keep up with the commitments you've made and feel confident in how you're organizing your day. You'll walk away with an easy to stick to 3-step system to keep up with your calendar and a simple way to sort through the giant to-do list and figure out what actually matters. Plus, we have a weekly accountability group so you can ask questions when you're stuck and jump back on the wagon when you fall off. Because you will fall off. That's just part of ADHD. But now you will know how to prepare for that. So if you're ready to figure out your day in a way that makes sense both for mom life and an ADHD brain, I want to help you make this happen. Join me at bit.ly/ADHD plan. That's bit.ly/ADHD plan. It's all lowercase letters. I cannot wait to see you feel confident and competent in how you run your family life.
And we've been doing a lot.
Look at you segueing so nicely.
I was like, ooh, and I didn't even plan this, because this is something we've been talking about a lot on the podcast, is like, how do we work with our cycles? Because our cycles have such a huge effect on our symptoms, on our energy level. And when we try to do really hard things in the time where we're like getting close to the start of our cycle and we don't have much energy at all, and here we are trying to do this monumental task, it's like we're almost setting ourselves up, maybe not to fail, but to not feel good while doing that thing. And I understand, like you were saying, like, this is something of privilege, is that I can choose when I do these things because I'm my own boss. I get to do what I want. There are jobs where you don't get that choice, and there are places in life and people who don't get those choices. So not to mitigate that. But when we do have the choice in how we arrange our schedules and how we live, and to make that work with our ADHD and with our cycles, it's a lot of things coming together, it really does benefit us. And you had mentioned that you have been doing cyclical parenting, and I was like, oh, I didn't even think about how I would apply this to how I parent my kids. And I was like, okay, well, now I definitely have to talk to Mary. So yeah. I'm like, do share.
I mean, where do I start? I have an 8-week course on this that was amazing to be with 20 other women and we synced it up to our cycles. I started talking about menstruation on the day I menstruated. It was awesome. When it comes to parenting, I think we need to really communicate. And I'm here's another point of privilege, is if you're regular and you're off the pill.
True.
Those two things, but you can also look at the moon and start to get a sense of how you cycle with the moon. But a couple things, like the day you menstruate, you are the most intuitive you will be all month. That is the time to make sure, even if you're not a journaler, that you answer some important questions for yourself, like, what am I wanting? What am I noticing in my children? What does my family need from me right now? What do I need? It's like you're going to an oracle, but the oracle is you. And the reason for that is when you're menstruating, both hemispheres of your brain have the most interconnectivity. Like if we looked at an MRI, we would see the most jumping back and forth of packets of information. So you have most access to your intuition and your knowing. So that's important part of parenting, is to check in with yourself on that day and to make some space for that. The other important part is luteal leaping. And that is that whole time when you are premenstrual, which can be anywhere from 3 days to 13 days for some people, that luteal time that you shift what your expectations are of yourself and your family. And I think it should be on your family calendar, a yellow highlighter of the predicted time when mom is not going to be her most squishy, loving, positive self. So this will be the time when you lean into decluttering and organizing, because your brain sees what's wrong. Okay, not this, so it is not a time to work on behavioral management with your kids, because you come across without the kindness. And I think great discipline has to be calm, firm, and kind. We don't always have a big access to that kind or even the calm when we're luteal. That's okay. That's how we're built. That's how we're wired. Nothing wrong with you. But
so just to clarify, luteal is the part right before your cycle starts, right? Right before you
bleed. So, first you have menstruation. That's the winter of your body. That's when everything shuts down and you most want to like be under the covers and you just want to sort of be still and rest. That's winter, kind of like when a flower is under the ground and you can't see it, but it needs that time to pull back all of its energy into the seed, right? So if we ignore our needs in menstruation, we pay for it for the rest of the cycle. So then you get into follicular, which is like when you stop bleeding, or about 3 to 4 days after you started. This is the spring where everything is building up towards ovulation, which generally is around the 14th day. If we say day 1 is when you bleed, and ovulation energy is the warmest for parenting. And this is when you want to set up one-on-one times with your kids, like a monthly time where you're having a date with just that one kid because you're really connecting with them. And it's when you want to have play dates, and it's when you want to gather your people for fake homeschool outings, where you go and you explore the world together. And then you come back into that after you have a few more days after ovulation where you're still up and at your most persuasive. And that's when you're working on, hey, I need you to empty the dishwasher. I'm going to follow through and stay with you as you do it. But then you start to get into that luteal. And my husband is so trained. He's like, it's feeling kind of ludicrous up in here. I'm going to step back because this is how I am made. And it was huge for me to stop seeing it as like, what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with me. This is a time to help my kids independent play. It is a time for me to have, this is takeout. And this is when I'm going to lean on the screen as a babysitter more than I normally do. I'm going to lower the expectations and I'm going to make my family aware so they don't feel like something's wrong with them. And I'm going to elevate rest where I can. And sometimes it's like, oh, really? Because I work on a factory floor for 12 hours. How am I going to elevate rest? I haven't actually met that person, but I know she might be listening. How you elevate rest is you speak kindly to yourself. Would you like to walk slowly to the bathroom? You are welcome to sit here on the potty and fully release everything in your pelvis. Like, take a moment. I got you. To yourself. This is how you're talking to yourself. I'm talking about reparenting if this is sort of a new thought to anybody. And that's being kind to that person in that little part of you inside of you.
And to think about all the ways that we can take our cycle and apply that into our lives, that it's not just about the way that we work or don't work, that we rest and don't rest, but also the way that we parent. Not to say that we don't parent, but like when we set ourselves up with that expectation that we know that this is how we're going to be in that time and that it's okay to like lower the bar, knowing that, well, 2 weeks before that is when we're really leaning into other parts that we're not leaning into now. Yes. Like knowing that there's that like ebb and flow.
Seasons. Yeah. There are seasons of our life every month.
We can speak to ourselves so much more graciously and with forgiveness to know like we're in fall, everything's dying.
And once we start to track it and get a sense of it, we can be a friend to ourselves about what we schedule, because there should be nothing at night during your luteal time. You're spent. You don't really want to be there. You're not making the event any better with your presence. And I have a book club that I've kind of had to opt out of because it meets every third Wednesday. And guess how Mary's feeling every third Wednesday. And each time I have to check in myself and say, oh, I'm part of this. I'm obligated. No, I don't want to do this. And if I do it and I go against what I want, my family's going to pay for it. And so shutting down the socializing and the extra things during that luteal time is important.
It's on one hand, like so life-giving. And then on the other hand, you're like, oh, again, there's so much about our bodies we don't understand. And when we bring all that together, it just allows us to know ourselves and be okay with saying no to the book club that maybe we loved before and it was great before, but it's not working now, and that's okay.
Yeah. You want to end with the meditation?
Yeah, I do. I want to do the lightning round first and then do.
What's the lightning round?
The lightning round is 6 questions. You just have to fill in the blank. You don't have to explain anything, just answer. So, number 1, the best thing that I've read or listened to recently is?
Rich Roll is interviewing on his podcast this woman who wrote The Awakened Brain, and she's talking about how science can see that spirituality is a necessity and exists. You can see it, like she's making the spiritual scientific, and it's very cool.
Number 2, My most boring about me fact is.
I love my bed and being in it.
Number 3, when I'm having a rough day, my go-to quote, song, poem, book, activity, whatever is.
Petting my dog and making voices for him.
Number 4, don't tell anyone
I was married before this man.
Number 5, if I had a magic fairy wand for one spell, I would
be able to stop time and I keep moving around and doing my thing, and then I can start it back up when I'm ready.
Number 6, my best piece of advice for mamas with ADHD is.
Look at all your strengths and find people that can mirror those back to you, that you have these gorgeous superpowers, and don't focus so much on what you can't do, because what you can do is miraculous.
Now, before we do our meditation, if the mamas want to learn more about you, where do they find you?
I'm giving it all on Instagram. So Mary Van Geffen at Instagram. And if they want to join my Moms of Spicy Ones, make it happen. It's starting in, I think, beginning of April. I don't know the date yet. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to turn it over to you to lead us in the.
Oh, yes. Okay. So this is a 1-minute meditation that really helps you come out of your monkey brain or out of your anger or frustration and into your body. And it comes from the work of Shirzad in the book and his research around positive intelligence and how we can actually build mental muscles for positivity, just like we can build, muscles with a push-up in our arms. And the way that we do this is, let's just do it. Stop talking about it and do it. So put down anything you have right now and just bring your full awareness into your body. And I want you to take the fingers of your right hand and begin to rub them along the palms and fingers of your left hand, maybe slower than you would like. And we're going to bring our full attention and awareness just to the sensation of fingers traveling across skin. We're going sort of back and forth on each hand. Other thoughts are going to come up and we just let them glide right back and come back to our job and just feeling each ridge and wrinkle of every expanse of skin. The judgment might come up and we recommand our brain to come back to this assignment, this task of feeling the soft, the rigid, the tender, the coarse skin underneath our fingers. As we keep moving them, we can bring it up to our ear. And now we're adding a second bodily sensation. We've got touch, and now we have sound. We can hear the whisper of our skin while still feeling every nook and cranny. And we're done. How was that for you?
It was very peaceful. And it feels very doable. A lot of times we have this built up thing of like meditation has to be for 45 minutes and moms are like, I'm never gonna have 45 minutes. This is like such a tiny chunk that it feels very doable.
Yes. And what's awesome about it is the failing at it and coming back to it is the doing. That's what builds like a gray matter bridge from our most archaic brainstem up to our prefrontal cortex. And you can actually see it on an MRI for people that do this 20 minutes a day. And they might do like 6 groups of 3 minutes. We just need to do 1 minute and we are doing the work. And so when we find our mind wandering, we just say, come right back here, gently bring it back to the assignment. And that is building our ability to be the operators of our mind instead of be sort of a passive victim of it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
It was so fun.
For more resources, classes, and community, head over to my website, motherhoodinadhd.com.